It sounds like Vic Fangio has big plans for Cooper DeJean in 2025. What he said today about Cooper's role should really excite you. I'll tell you why coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day, Monday through Friday. I'm your host, Louis DiBiase. Thanks so much for making us a part of your day. Even during the dead zone of the offseason, still got you Monday through Friday right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It's not really, though, the dead zone of the offseason currently, as Eagles OTAs continue at the NovaCare Complex. Eventually, at the end of June, when players break for the summer before training camp, that'll really be the dead zone of the offseason as we get ready for camp, the preseason, and before you know it, the 2025 regular season will be upon us. But today, there's actually a lot to take away from OTAs. Not really the on-the-field practice stuff that I always kind of take with a grain of salt this time of year, but when you take a look at the press conferences, specifically Vic Fangio's, the Eagles defensive coordinator, heading into year 2 running this Eagles defense, I thought he had a lot of interesting things to say today about Bryce Huff, about Jihaad Campbell, about Cooper DeJean, so on and so forth. What he talked about with Cooper DeJean specifically should really excite you. So last week, there was a lot of talk about Cooper DeJean potentially moving from the slot to the outside cornerback position opposite Quinyon Mitchell. Now that Darius Slay is in Pittsburgh, Isaiah Rodgers is in Minnesota. We heard a lot from OTAs that DeJean in base packages is that outside corner opposite Quinyon. That, again, like I said on that show, it shouldn't surprise you when there's only 2 corners out there. It's going to be Quinyon and DeJean, but the Eagles run nickel 3 cornerback sets 90 to 95% of the time. So in those moments, I don't think DeJean will move to the boundary. He'll play in the slot, but he will play a new role this year if he is on the boundary in those packages, because last year he was not. When there was only 2 corners on the field, it was Darius Slay and Quinyon Mitchell. So DeJean could have a new role in that way, but Vic Fangio talked today about maybe exploring other alternative options when DeJean is not in the slot. He talked about the idea of Coop potentially playing safety. And he said specifically that Cooper DeJean's skill set does translate very well to the safety position. And I completely agree with him. This is music to my ears, because Cooper DeJean, coming out of Iowa, although he played boundary cornerback the majority of the time with the Hawkeyes, I had said, and when Gino was on the show, he alluded to the same thing. Gino actually ranked him as a safety, not a cornerback. I said he's going to be a nickel corner at the next level, maybe a hybrid safety, Swiss Army knife matchup type of DB. I kept comparing him to Brian Branch coming out of Alabama a few years ago. He's that kind of Swiss Army knife matchup-based player for Detroit. But playing safety is really interesting because I think, again, Coop will play nickel 90% of the time, but when he's not playing nickel, is Vic exploring the option of putting him at safety rather than a boundary corner? Like he kind of explored that today during his press conference, saying maybe in base packages, he won't be the outside corner opposite Quinyon Mitchell. It might be Keely Ringo or Adoree Jackson, and maybe they say DeJean's going to be this roaming Malcolm Jenkins, Brian Branch type of hybrid matchup-based DB. And that's what I've always envisioned for him in the future. Again, I want him at nickel the majority of the time because that is where his ceiling is. Last year, he was one of the best nickel cornerbacks in football, a Rookie of the Year finalist. Predominantly, that's where he'll line up. But there will be interesting situations where, let's say the other team has an elite receiving tight end or an elite receiving running back, and they want to move DeJean around the formation, again, as this like matchup Malcolm Jenkins type of safety option when he's not playing nickel. I would much rather that be his role than playing the boundary in any situation. Again, I think DeJean can be a very high floor, good outside cornerback, but I don't know if he'll ever be a great elite cornerback on the outside considering his skill set. But in the nickel, we already know he's elite. And if they start to use him as this like pseudo safety type of player, I don't know if he'll ever play cover one. He's the single high safety. I don't think he's that kind of guy. But what Fangio said today about DeJean is interesting because I think he's going to start to use him more as this like hybrid box player as a safety. Like I think he's going to use him across the formation more than just lining up in the nickel. And I prefer that over him playing on the outside because I think that's where his skill set does fit best. That's a really, really exciting possibility for Coop in year 2. And I think last year it showed that he can take on a lot and be okay. Like he did not play nickel cornerback in college, transitions to nickel in year 1, and again was one of the best nickel cornerbacks in football. He was a punt returner. He was an outside corner. This is a multi-sport athlete growing up. I don't think that DeJean's plate is going to get overloaded this year. And heading into year 2, I think you can start to explore different ways to use him on defense. So that part of Fangio's press conference was really, really exciting to me. He also talked about Jihaad Campbell. Jihad Campbell, the Eagles' first-round rookie, although he's not likely to practice fully until August with the shoulder surgery that he had this offseason, Fangio did say Campbell is starting off playing inside linebacker since there's, quote, more to learn at the position. It's more of a complicated position, but Fangio also did say there is obvious edge rushing potential with Campbell. So I think they do plan to use him at inside linebacker the majority of the time, just like Cooper DeJean's going to be used the majority of the time as a nickel corner. So this wasn't all that surprising to me because you wouldn't start him at inside linebacker, even if there is more to learn to digest at that spot. If you think Campbell is a full-time edge rusher like Jalix Hunt last year, they weren't going to move him to inside linebacker first just to learn the position. Like they didn't do that with Nolan Smith. They didn't do that with Jalix Hunt. So although Fangio's right, there is more to learn as an inside backer. If you didn't plan on having him there for a sizable part of his snaps on defense, if you didn't plan on him having a very big role as an inside linebacker, even if there's more to take on, you wouldn't start him there. So I think that was very telling today that Fangio said Campbell is going to start as inside linebacker. That doesn't surprise me. I think his ceiling is as a stand-up inside backer that can still get to the quarterback as a blitzer. You can move him across the formation. I think he will play edge at times. But I think Fangio wants to kind of do the Zach Bond experiment with Jihaad Campbell. Take a more of a pure edge rusher and turn him into a star inside linebacker. But we're going to have to wait a little bit for that because, again, Campbell will not be practicing fully until August. Another inside linebacker, Nakobe Dean, Fangio talked about today. He, will not be back anytime soon. So that's another reason Campbell's going to play inside linebacker early on, too, is that they need him to. Because outside of Zach Bond and Jeremiah Trotter Jr., like, what do you have when it comes to healthy inside backers for this season? You have Smael Mondon, the rookie day 3 pick out of Georgia. You know, Ben Van Sumeren is going to play fullback the majority of the time this year, so I don't know if he's really an option. That's why they also need Campbell at linebacker on the inside this season, and I think that's going to be his role because, like Fangio said today, Nakobe's not going to be back, really anytime soon, and I think he'll end up most likely missing some time in the beginning of the 2025 season. So a lot coming from the Eagles, godfather of the defense, Vic Fangio, some really interesting things that he said today about Campbell, DeJean, about also Bryce Huff, talking about why it wasn't a great fit in his defense, talked about the injury and the emergence of Nolan Smith and Jalix Hunt as to why Huff kind of fell out of favor at the end of the year, why he was a healthy scratch. Fangio normally doesn't say a lot of interesting things, I personally believe, during press conferences. Not a whole lot of takeaways. I love the blunt honesty, but normally not a lot of huge takeaways. But today there was. Like, what he's doing with potentially the two most versatile pieces of his defense, these Swiss Army knife type of jackal players, Jihaad Campbell and Cooper DeJean, hearing his thought process about those two guys, that's exciting because when you look at DeJean and Campbell, guys that can play, DeJean can play slot corner, outside corner, safety, he can return punts. Jihaad Campbell can play inside linebacker. He can play edge rusher. He can move across the formation. The Eagles have had a lot of star defensive players over the years, but these kind of guys where each matchup, they can have a completely different role in the offense pre-snap. Every single play, it feels like you may never know what those guys are going to do or what their assignment is. that's exciting because the Eagles have never really had that on their defense. So getting these kind of players over the last few years was a way for Howie Roseman to evolve this defense. And I think Fangio is the perfect guy to figure out what their roles should be and to properly maximize their skill sets. Really exciting stuff. Can't wait to continue to follow the progress of Campbell in the summer and to see what Cooper DeJean's role is going to be in year 2. Speaking of young players that have a big role on defense, I want to talk about Nolan Smith coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. Smith met with the media today as well, and I think there's a ton of pressure on the year 3 pass rusher. I'll tell you why coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. Today's episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. As a small business owner, your work doesn't end when the clock hits 5. You're like Howie Roseman. When the clock hits 5, that's probably when he gets to the phones and tries to start making trades. Like, the clock never ends for Howie Roseman, and it's probably the same for you and your business. It's always on your mind, which means when it's time to hire, you need a partner that works just as hard as you do. That's where LinkedIn Jobs comes in. When you clock out, LinkedIn clocks in. LinkedIn makes it easy to post your job for free, share it with your network, and get qualified candidates all in just one place. The Post Your Job feature can help you write job descriptions and then quickly get your job in front of the right people. With deep candidate insights, and here's a pro tip, add the hashtag hiring frame to your profile picture to double your reach to qualified candidates. No wonder 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn helps them find high quality hires. So post your job for free today at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. So Nolan Smith met with the media today, the Philadelphia Eagles year 3 edge rusher, and this is a guy that's consistently caused pressure to the quarterback in the pocket over the last year. I mean, he had a breakout season in 2024. After the bye week, starting with that Browns game and on, he just got better and better and better and better. In the playoffs, he took that play to another level. He broke the Eagles' single season record for most sacks in one single playoff run. Like, that's how good Nolan Smith was during the championship run. And I think there's a lot of pressure on Nolan to continue on that trajectory in 2025. Like, he is I will say he's one of the most important players to the Eagles' success in 2025. They really need him to continue that development. And development isn't always linear. You know, like, sometimes people take a step back after taking 3 steps forward, and then, you know, they leap forward 10 steps. Like, you never know how these players are going to progress when they're young. And Nolan Smith is heading into just year 3. So who knows what you're going to get out of him this year. But the Eagles are really banking on him continuing to be who he was the second half of 2024 for the entirety of 2025. And I was thinking about this because of the Bryce Huff trade. Not that Bryce Huff getting traded really changed anything about the state of this position, but when you look now with Huff gone, you look over the Eagles' edge rush room, there's, like I said, a lot of pressure on Nolan Smith because although there's a lot of potential with this group, the ceiling is very high. Nolan Smith, I think, can be a star pass rusher for the Eagles. I think he already was that guy last year. Jalen Hunt has as much potential as anybody in football heading into year 2 on the edge. He has all the traits to be an elite pass rusher: the length, the speed, the athleticism, the power, the youth. Like, Jalen Hunt can be that guy as well. Joshua Uche is a former second-round pick, a very skilled, pure pass rusher that has had a double-digit sack season in the NFL. Azeez Ojulari, another former second-round pick that, when he's healthy, consistently gets, I would say, 5 to 8 or 9 sacks a year. Hasn't had a double-digit sack season yet, but you know you're getting at least 5 to 7 to 8 sacks in a season with Azeez Ojulari. So when you look at those 4, you also add in the fact that I think Jihad Campbell will play some edge snaps. He'll play mostly inside linebacker, as Fangio talked about today, but I think he will get snaps on the edge. When you combine those 5 guys, that's a lot of potential. That's a lot of youth. That's a lot of speed. That's a lot of interesting prospects for Howie Roseman's edge rush group. But this is also the riskiest group of edge rushers that Howie Roseman has ever put together. A lot of this is based on projection. They are projecting Nolan Smith to take another step in year 3. They are projecting Jihaad Hunt to take another step in year 2. They're hoping that Azeez Ojulari can stay healthy this year. They're hoping that Joshua Uche in a new system, if he's asked to just focus on getting to the quarterback, right? If they use him the way that the Jets use Bryce Huff and the way Fangio probably should have used Bryce Huff, if they use Uche in that way, then they can get that 10-sack player that the New England Patriots had out of Uche in 2022. So there's a lot of potential, but a lot of it's projection based on small sample sizes. Nolan Smith has only done it once. Nolan Smith put it all together for, it's not even a full year, but it was during a Super Bowl run and it was key, but it was only for 1 year. Jihaad Hunt put it together for 4 to 5 games at the end of the year. And of course, those were important games. He saved his best for last for the most important stage, the NFL playoffs, including a great NFC Championship performance and the Super Bowl, but it was only 4 to 5 really good games out of Jihaad Hunt. Azeez Ojulari, I think he's been the most consistent edge rusher of this group, but consistently, he is injured. Consistently, he is not available. Joshua Uche last year was a healthy scratch for the Kansas City Chiefs in the Super Bowl. He was their version of what Bryce Huff was to the Eagles, Uche had become for the Kansas City Chiefs. They were not playing him on the football field. So the ceiling is high for this group, but the floor is a lot lower than Howie Roseman is used to. There's no Brandon Graham this year, where you know what you're getting out of that player this year. There's no Josh Sweat, where you know what you're getting out of Josh Sweat. Maybe he doesn't always hit the ceiling, but there's always a floor production. Between Brandon Graham and Josh Sweat, you knew you were getting, 15 to 20 sacks a year. There is no Hassan Reddick in this room in 2025. So it's a risky group. That's why they really need Nolan Smith to step up and continue on that star trajectory. There is a ton of pressure on Nolan Smith. When it comes to starters in 2025 for the Birds, how many other guys in the lineup have this much pressure on them? I think it's Nolan Smith. Who? Tyler Steen maybe at right guard. It's a lot of players that when you look at the situation they're in, a lot of them, like the Eagles, they have other options. And with the edge group, they have other options, but nobody to the level of Nolan Smith. Maybe Jihaad Hunt can get there, but Azeez Ojulari is never going to be your alpha go-to pass rusher. I don't think Joshua Uche will be that either, and I'm not projecting Jihaad Hunt to be that this year. So Nolan Smith, not only is there pressure because he's got to make sure he at least has a certain floor of production because those other guys are risky plays, but he's also got to be the star of the group because Josh Sweat isn't here anymore. Brandon Graham isn't here anymore. Hassan Reddick isn't here. So they need him to hit the ceiling if they want to reach their full potential this year and make a serious run in a repeat Super Bowl championship. And it's crazy that we've gotten here so fast with Nolan. This was a former first-round pick. He's heading into year 3. Last year proved he could be that guy for this defense, but I didn't think he was going to have to be that guy so fast. I really do think I thought between Josh Sweat and Hassan Reddick, if you would have told me 2 years ago that neither one of those guys would, when they drafted Nolan Smith, if you would have told me neither one of those players would be on the Eagles just a year and a half later, basically, 2 seasons later, I would have thought you're crazy. So I thought Nolan would have to eventually step up and be a top 2 guy in this rotation, but I didn't think he would have to be the guy. But as Brandon Graham said in a interview yesterday with the Ross Tucker football podcast, Brandon Graham said the room is Nolan Smith's. He already is the veteran vocal leader of that group. So there is a lot of pressure on the Eagles' first-round pick from 2023. The good news, though, again, Nolan Smith was incredible last year. He was an elite run defender on the edge. He was your go-to sack producer down the stretch. He broke the franchise record for most sacks in a single playoff run. I believe it was 4, maybe it was 4.5. Don't quote me on that. The guy played through a serious injury in the Super Bowl. This is a pillar piece of your defense. So I'm very confident that Nolan Smith will live up to the hype this year and continue off the play that he had last year. But there's a lot of pressure for him to do it. He's going to have to because, again, this group Howie Roseman took a big risk with the strategy that he took on the edge. And he could go out there and sign a Zadarius Smith or a Matthew Judon or a Jadeveon Clowney, but I don't think they have a star edge rusher option outside of Nolan this year, unless they go out there and make a huge trade for like a TJ Watt or a Trayvon Walker or a TJ Hendrickson, which I don't think is going to happen. Nolan's the guy. Like, Nolan is the guy that has the potential to be the alpha, and I don't know if there's another option, at least in the building right now. You got Jalen Carter on the inside, but it's Nolan on the edge. All right, guys, coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. Thought we'd have some fun to wrap up this Tuesday edition of the show. Saquon Barkley is on the cover of Madden 26, the backwards leap, and Kelly Green. It looks beautiful. It's going to be on the cover of Madden 26. So I started to think about football video games, taking a trip down memory lane. I want to get your guys' thoughts on this as well. I ranked my top 5 all-time football games. I'll get into that coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. All right, so earlier today I was on the Locked On Eagles squad show with Mark Farzetta, Harry Mays. If you guys are not checking out our new squad shows that go for an hour live on YouTube, on our Locked On Eagles YouTube channel, Tuesdays and Thursdays, make sure you check it out. It's been a great time with Farzi, with Harry Mays. Jason Martinez has been on the majority of the time as well. He was off today, but the 4 of us are every Tuesday and Thursday live on YouTube starting at 12 o'clock. So make sure you check out our new Locked On Eagles and our Locked On squad shows across the podcast network. But we were talking today about Saquon Barkley being on the cover of Madden 26. The first time an Eagle is on the cover of Madden since Donovan McNabb in 2006. And we started to talk about our favorite football video games, started to rank games. Harry Mays said that he's never played a football video game in his entire life, which I think is crazy. I'm on the opposite end of that spectrum. Madden, NFL Street, all these old football games were my life. Like, I played video games sports video games my entire life. And I didn't just play them. I was like a religious sports gamer. And Madden, it was everything on PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3. I think I stopped during the PlayStation 4 era. I don't really game anymore. I'm more of a nostalgic gamer, so I still have my PlayStation 2. So I'll play some of these games that I ranked on the show today. I'll still play those games, but like, I don't have a PlayStation 5. I don't know if I'll end up getting Madden 26. I might get it just for the cover to put it in the studio. But back in the day, religious football gamer. With that being said, I decided to rank my top 5 all-time football video games, and I want to get your guys' thoughts as well. Make sure you hit us up on X after the show, at LockedOnBirds, at DBLCLOE, or you can also hit us up on our YouTube community page. So for me, Madden, again, was like my life. But I will say, I actually was a bigger fan of the arcadey football games. So my number 1 football video game of all time was NFL Street 2. This was, I think, ahead of his time. And I think EA Sports, or whoever has the rights to this game now, I think it was EA Big. It was like a separate part of the EA, video game branch. NFL Street 2, if you could make this game now with the modern players, it would make so much money. It was basically just backyard football with NFL players in it. So you could jump off the walls and throw it at the same time. There was these things called game breakers where if you had a game breaker, basically you like superpowered your player and nobody could tackle him. If you got a game breaker too, and you got game breakers by earning points and through big plays. So if you scored a big time 40-yard, 50-yard touchdown and you dove off the wall into the end zone, you got a ton of points. Game breaker 2, the computer would literally score a touchdown for you and like create this movie cinematic scene of your touchdown. That video game was ahead of its time. To me, that's my number 1 all-time football game. And they should definitely bring that back. Like, if you could play as Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley and, Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown just playing pickup NFL Street, I think it would be 4 at this point. I think they did make a 3rd in the mid-2000s. Moneymaker. So EA Sports, if you guys are able to produce that game, please bring it back. That's my number 1 game of all time for football video games. Number 2, again, I liked the arcadey games growing up. I still play these games to this day. NFL Blitz 2000. I'm not an arcade machine guy. I will never collect arcade machines like some. But if I could have And I'm not a big man cave guy either. Like, I've got my podcast studio, but that's about it. I don't need this giant man cave. If I were to have a man cave, though, and I could have an arcade machine in it, NFL Blitz 2000, like, that's the one you gotta have. I mean, that game was all-out war. I mean, it was one of the most intense, violent football games of all time. And the great part about it, if you play that game on an arcade machine, you're playing as the Eagles, Doug Peterson is actually the quarterback. So that game, kind of like NFL Street 2, very arcadey, but those are the kind of games I like growing up. That's number 2. For number 3, if I only picked 2 Madden games, one as a kid and one more when I was big-time gaming in high school, early college. My number 3 video game in the history of football video games, Madden 2004. The one with Michael Vick on the cover. Michael Vick was unstoppable in that football game. The gameplay was just so smooth. The way that quarterbacks could run. I don't really, honestly, I sound like an old man saying this, but I don't love the modern day football games with how realistic it is. It feels too jolty to me. There's too many controls that you got to have. Again, I like the arcade feel of these old games. Madden 2004 still kind of had that feel, but it was a lot more realistic than Blitz and Street. Michael Vick, though, was in that game. What Bo Jackson was to Techno Bowl, that was Michael Vick for Madden 04. Still have that game. I think I bought it on eBay during COVID for like $10. Now it's like, I think you have to spend at least 50 plus to get that video game. But Michael Vick, like that video game was like the birth of the mobile quarterback being unstoppable, where everybody wanted to play as them. Everyone wanted to play as Vick. And Vick, honestly, at that time, there was probably a Vick rule that you all had growing up where me and my brother, we would not let each other play as the Atlanta Falcons. If we were doing a fantasy draft and creating new teams in Madden, we weren't allowed to play as Michael Vick. But the gameplay of that game to this day, I still think is really smooth. It allows for a lot of scoring. It is very hard to play on defense. But those, again, are the kind of games I like. NFL Street 2, good luck playing on defense. NFL Blitz, good luck trying to stop the offense. They're just shootouts every single game. And that's what I love about football video games. So those are my top 3. NFL Street, NFL Blitz, and then Madden. And Madden 2004 specifically. Then 4 and 5, NCAA 2009 with Deshaun Jackson on the cover from California. That's my favorite college football game. Campus Legend mode to this day is still fun to play. You're the quarterback of, I was the quarterback of Oregon on campus. You could go to practice. You could decide if you were going to study or party. Like, it was, again, these old games had some features that I feel like, again, an old man yelling at a cloud, right? The Simpsons meme. But these old games had these features that new games don't have. I feel like new sports games have gotten very lazy, and it's part of why I play more PlayStation 2 than if I had a PlayStation 5, then I'd probably play the PS5. NCAA 2009 was one of those last games on the PS2 that still had that kind of feel to it. And then number 5, the only like modern Madden game that I really liked. This was the last Madden game that I actually spent my own money on, Madden 17. So this was heading into Super Bowl 52 season with Carson Wentz taking that run. That game, I just remember having a lot of fun playing that summer. There was so much excitement and buzz surrounding the Eagles that year. And we didn't even think they were going to go do what they eventually did, which was win the Super Bowl that season with a backup quarterback in Nick Foles. But there was a lot of hype that offseason because Carson was in that year 2. Everybody expects the quarterback to, if they're going to take the jump, it's going to be in year 2. We all thought that was going to happen with Carson, and it did. They had signed Alshon Jeffrey. They had brought in Torrey Smith. They had brought in LeGarrette Blount. They had traded for Ronald Darby. Like, there was a lot of new pieces to play that game with for the Eagles. And so I always remember Madden 17 fondly with Rob Gronkowski on the cover. So those are my top 5. NFL Street 2, NFL Blitz 2000, Madden 2004, NCAA 2009, and then Madden 17. I'm sure Madden 26 for a lot of you will probably be on there at some point. Now that an Eagle is on the cover, Saquon Barkley on the cover of Madden 26. All right, guys, that's going to do it for today's edition of Locked On Eagles. Thanks so much for making us your first listen each and every day. We'll be back tomorrow. Still got 3 more shows for you this week, so make sure you subscribe on all podcast platforms and on YouTube as well. Thanks as always for downloading, watching, and listening, and let's go Birds. Fly, Eagles, fly.